He who rules East Europe commands the Heartland. He who rules the Heartland commands the world island. He who rules the world island commands the world. The Heartland Theory, and the real reason behind the Nordstream sabotage. Who sabotaged Nord Stream? Well, the question that should be asked is Qui Bono, which means who stands to gain in Latin. If we are to believe the media, Russia is the guilty party. Of course, if in doubt, blame Russia. Any foul play or misconduct, it's Russia. Russia evil, West good. Russia blowing up the Nord Stream pipelines makes no sense at all, and here's why. Firstly, Russia controls the flow of gas, so if they wanted to stop the flow into Germany, they could simply close off the valves. That's it. They have full control at their end. The gas flows from Russia to Germany, not the other way around. So why expend resources when they can effortlessly turn off the taps? Secondly, the location of the incident is within close proximity to Danish and Swedish waters, which are patrolled by not only these two countries, but also the US Navy. In other words, this happened in waters hostile to Russia, making it very difficult to carry out such an operation undetected. Not to mention the risk of getting caught, which would cause a huge diplomatic row. Nord Stream runs through the Baltic, which is a NATO lake and surrounded by countries extremely belligerent towards Russia, especially Poland. Moreover, Russia invested a lot of money into this project, along with Germany, which took years to complete. Germany, and certainly the rest of Europe, stood absolutely nothing to gain from this. In fact, they are the biggest losers from this act of terrorism, which leaves only one belligerent left in the room. That's right, our so-called friends in Washington. The USA is the only side that benefits from this. And why is that? First of all, it ensures total compliance from the EU, as they have no possibility of reversing their sanctions and somehow going back to Russia for their energy needs. This applies especially to Germany, whose industry is heavily reliant on cheap gas from Russia, enabling them to remain competitive, not to mention residential energy requirements for the population. Sanctioning Russia is in no way beneficial to Europe. The only reason they have participated in this is because they have been ordered to do so by Washington. Europe is hopelessly misled and is without any competent, serious leaders. At this point, all the so-called leaders are simply administrators who follow the commands of Washington in their proxy war with Russia. They are essentially puppets with no ability to make any kind of independent decisions. That being said, once reality hits the general populations of Europe, and the consequences of these reckless sanctions become undeniably evident, resulting in social unrest, even these weak and incompetent leaders will be forced to seek ways of restarting Nord Stream, and Washington knows this. So they ordered the sabotage, effectively burning the last bridge Europe had, and thus preventing any possible future energy trade with Russia. Now, why is Washington so hell-bent on cutting trade between its European allies and Russia? And no, it's nothing to do with Ukraine. No, Washington has never been in favor of Nord Stream. They've been against it from the start, which predates the war by many years, as well as Europe developing closer ties with Russia, politically, economically, and culturally. So where does this animosity towards Russia come from? Check out this video I did a few months ago. This will answer that question. But in this video, I will focus on another reason, something more geographical, and ultimately at the core of the material reasons behind Russophobia. For this, we need to go back to 1904, when Halford Mackinder published a paper on the geographical pivot of history, where he formulated the Heartland Theory, also known as the Mackinder thesis. The premise is that the Earth's land surface is comprised of three regions: the world island of Afro-Eurasia, that is, Europe, Africa, and Asia, which are all interconnected, the offshore islands of Great Britain and Japan, and finally, the outlying islands of North and South America and Oceania. The Heartland consists of the vast lands stretching from the Volga to the Yangtze. This is the pivot area, which covers all of Central and North Asia, present-day Russia, and the stands of the former Soviet Union. Control over this area means control of the world island, the most resource-rich and populous of the three regions. Control of the world island means control of the entire world. Since Russia covers most of the Heartland, this puts Moscow in a very strategically advantageous position, much to the frustration and alarm of the current global hegemon, that is, the USA and its European vassals. According to Mackinder, the struggle is between the oceanic seafaring power bloc, also known as the Atlanticists, or the Anglo-American establishment, which occupy the offshore and outlying islands, and the continental land powers of Prussia, Germany, and Russia. The vast armies of the land powers, if united, would defeat the oceanic powers in a conventional confrontation. Thus, the aim of the Atlanticists has always been to prevent any kind of unification between the major Eurasian land powers in a divide-and-conquer strategy. They are the uncontested masters of the seas, so the land powers have no way of confronting them other than on land. Ultimately, neither side can really go on the offensive against the other directly, unless of course the land powers formed a united front, in which case they could harness all their collected resources and build up a navy of their own, powerful enough to destroy their enemies. So the best strategy for the continental powers is to unite, whilst the Atlanticists' only option is to keep them divided, thus playing the major belligerents off against each other in various wars or political tensions. The oceanic powers do have the ability to blockade their enemies, which is akin to laying siege to a city. However, the world island is immune to naval blockades, as they have access to enough resources. Another oceanic method of ensuring division of the continental powers is subversion, infiltration, and deceit, in order to destabilize and create chaos. By inducing conflict and causing the land powers to fight and destroy each other, the world island will never unite. We can observe this throughout history, as the British have always sided against the most powerful continental forces at the time: France, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia. The worst case scenario for the oceanic Atlanticists would be a Russo-German alliance, as this would consolidate control over Eastern Europe, which is the key to the Heartland. In 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed a non-aggression pact and were effectively allies. Had they remained so, there would not have been a World War II. Instead, this would have led to a Russo-German global hegemon, leaving the USA and Britain as secondary players. So fast forward to 2022, and what do we see? The oceanic Atlanticists of the USA and Britain, who control most of Europe and the rest of the world, in absolute panic as global supremacy slips away. Look at the geography of Ukraine. It lies in the extremely important location of Eastern Europe, which is absolutely vital for those wishing to keep the world island from uniting. Control of Eastern Europe means control of the Heartland. The unification of the world island means the end of American hegemony. This is simply unacceptable to those in power. Germany, although a vassal of Washington, could still break away and somehow become independent. Nordstream represents a vehicle that would not only move Germany away from Washington, but closer to Moscow. Historically, Germany and Russia always drift together if left unmolested by foreign agents of subversion. These two countries becoming allies represents the biggest threat to Atlanticist hegemony. So now we can see the motives the USA and Britain have for wanting to destroy Nord Stream. Not to mention their determination to wrestle Ukraine away from Russia, and Russia's necessity in preventing this by retaking control over this former Soviet republic and reclaiming Russian territory. Moscow was caught with its guard down in 2014, which was a wake-up call as they realized the psychotic nature of those in power and who control the Atlanticist power block, who will stop at nothing to destroy Russia so they can plunder its resources and retain their status as global hegemon, something they will not negotiate on. They do not want a multi- or bipolar world. They want absolute control.